Hi, everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 30th, 2021, live streaming from Chicago. I'm Ben Greiner, Director of Apple Technology. And with me is Ross Matsuda, our Systems Administrator focused on the Apple platform. And today we are discussing automation. But first, some news. Excuse me, I got tangled up in my cables. Let's see, a couple news items. Let me share my screen so we can get some reference here. Share screen. Let's go right into Apple announced a couple weeks ago. I think it was, my weeks are all messed up, Ross, because of Thanksgiving. So I feel like we just did this, but it's been 2 weeks. And I think it was 2 weeks ago that Apple announced Apple Business Essentials. And I must admit they did it in not the best way, because they announced it to our clients. That's how we found out about it. And as an Apple partner, that always stings a little bit when we're not kept abreast of what's coming down the pipe. But we did sign up for the beta. It is a beta. It doesn't look like they plan on coming out of beta until early next year. We signed up for the beta, and we just got the official invite today, or maybe last night, but I saw it this morning. And so we'll be diving into this. Everything we do know about it so far is, as the name implies, it's essentials. It's basically building on Apple Business Manager for automations, which is timely because that's what we're talking about today. And really, we're already delivering everything that they're showing here through a more robust system that is more than essential. But I think this is a good entry point for small businesses who have not yet gotten to the point where they need services like ours. And I think it will elevate the entire industry as people become more aware of what these tools actually do. So any comments on that, Ross?
I mean, that's the most of it. It looks like it's going to be a really strong contender for, just like you said, for those smaller organizations that are still feeling out their needs. And especially for iOS, there's a tremendous amount of functionality that's not going to be available on this platform just based on how it's structured when it comes to managing Macs. But it's certainly a neat offering, and jury's still out. We'll have more information over the coming weeks and months as we learn and as the platform changes and exits beta.
Right. Here, let me go into, I'm going to share my full screen. That's just easier to do that. Share full screen, desktop. Okay, there we go. Minimize this. Okay, let's get into this presentation here. Do you see my screen, Ross?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're good.
Okay. It's a little awkward here, going either full screen or not full screen, but you get the point. I think you can see.
Yeah, no,
think automation. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that's kind of I'm passionate about, and that is automation. And I'm going to try to focus on this. In fact, one of the challenges that I've kind of run into with these live streams is, I know in today's world, it's not always convenient for everyone to, be here at noon on Tuesday. And in fact, that's why we record these. That's why we make them available. And I do get some great feedback that people watch them later online, and I appreciate that. But for those of you who do join us live, feel free to comment and ask questions and get involved and give us feedback. There was an interesting article I read recently that said, there are 3 different levels of presenting. There's the live meetings, which we all have. There's the recorded presentations, and then there's what we're doing here, a live stream. And it was kind of making an argument that we're all so busy, everything should just be recorded unless you really need to interact with your audience. And I understand that, and I appreciate that, and that's why I would either like to have more interaction, or maybe we go to a recorded format. However, I was thinking about the recorded format. It would be so easy for me to say, I don't have time for this. I'll shift it, I'll move it, I'll do it later. I like the pressure of the live stream. Like, you've got to show up, you've got to present, you've got to be ready for this, so it gets things done. So I know that's a random share, but if anyone has comments on that, either now or later, let me know. So think automation. Okay, no, we were going to talk about some news. In addition to the news we talked about from Apple, Ross has been working on updating our nudge notifications. And Ross, why don't you just share a little bit about what this is going to do starting tomorrow for those of us who are running Big Sur or Monterey? Is that correct?
Correct. And deployment begins tomorrow, but it won't be hitting everyone probably until early next week. So it's going to be, I push these out in waves. But the nudge notifications that everyone's used to are primarily going to remain the same. And it's this pop-up that lets you know, hey, your computer's out of compliance. There's a security update that you need to run. And you can see we've got in there a little thumbnail image you can click on, and it shows you what you're going to see when you click that update device button. It brings up system preferences. It takes you to software update. And then what you see can change a lot. And either it's just going to show you the software update window, and there might be a banner that's telling you that maybe you should upgrade to macOS Monterey or Big Sur. Or you might just have a, run your update button. Well, what I've been successful at starting right now, I've got it working for Monterey and Big Sur, is starting with this new push. Instead of taking you to that screen where you might have a couple different options to click on, I finally found a strange workaround that allows me to bring up this particular screen. And so what this is normally when you get into system preferences, software update, you might have to fish around for a small button labeled more info. That's going to show you this. These are the details of the updates that are available for your Mac. It lets you choose which ones you want to run. Normally you run all of them, and then allows you to click install now to begin. Up until this patch that I'm hopefully publishing tomorrow, if all goes well, we needed to rely on the user to swim through that sometimes confusing window to get here. And now it's looking like we're going to be able to just take people straight here, which I'm really hoping is going to cut down on confusion, especially for users who see that big shiny, upgrade now button, install Monterey or install Big Sur, and start going down that road. They download the entire operating system, they get ready to do it, they click the button, and then it gets blocked.
Yeah.
And so what this is going to do is, again, it's just for users on the newer operating systems for the moment. It's just going to make the workflow an extra step smoother. So when you see this, you can just click that blue update device button in the top right corner. It'll take you straight to the window you need to be to. It's going to bring this exact interface up. So you just have one last click for install now, just to get rid of some of that confusion. We're hoping that this makes the update process, especially for these updates that require a restart, even smoother than they've been in the past.
Yeah, and Ross and I were just talking about how we seem to be talking about this every 2 weeks, but it's so important because fruit fly. It's so important and it's so frustrating. I got him. We're good. So frustrating for people that when we ask them, when we nudge them, that's what this is called, nudge. We nudge them, hey, you have 0 days remaining here to update your operating system. And they click update, it takes them to a window, but there's actually a sub window. And Ross has figured out a way to bypass that and take us straight to the window we need. And this is something that we've asked Apple to take care of in the Mac OS, so we don't have to build these workarounds. But Ross, this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to a lot fewer calls to the desk once this rolls out, and helping people get upgraded and updated more efficiently. So let's get back to improve your business operations, think automation. And first, I want to talk about a few benefits of automation, if they're not obvious, and these really are just a few benefits. Improving your efficiency, accuracy, consistency. If you can do something repeatedly over and over again through automation, that's a huge improvement to your operations. I would also argue you're going to have happier workers or employees or team members, because most of what can be automated is not that exciting. It's drudgery work. It's checking this, checking that, and building the automations can be very satisfying, but if without that automation, asking your team to do some of these tasks, they probably don't enjoy doing it. If they do, man, that's a special person. Hang on to them. Reduce human error. I mean, we see it all the time. We try not to make mistakes, but we are human. We all will make mistakes, and if you can automate that, the only way a robot is going to make a mistake is if you tell it to do something in the wrong way. And of course, better compliance. In today's security and compliance age, the only way really to achieve compliance is through automation. I don't see how you can do it any other way. And lastly, improve collaboration. And I feel like if you can automate things, you can spend more quality time communicating and collaborating because you're not distracted by those mundane tasks. So that's a really high level view of my view of automation benefits. Let's get into what I would consider two types of automations and some subcategories. One is device automation. And in device automation, we have policies, we have profiles, and we have scripts. And I'm sure we could come up with a whole list of additional items, but those are kind of the categories that I put them into. Policies kind of work behind the scenes. Ross works on those to put devices into certain policies, and those policies have certain instructions. Profiles get installed on a machine and tell a machine what it can or cannot do. And then scripts are basically a series of tasks that are automated. And we may push out a script, or we may ask a client to open Mac Manage and run what is essentially a script that does a series of things that anyone could do, but trying to convey to them how to do that and ensuring that they do it accurately and consistently is a challenge. And when it's much easier just to hit the button and run the script. Now, there's also what I refer to as human automation. And this is where device automation only gets you so far. You still need some things to happen with human interaction. And forms are a big part of that for us, and checklist. And checklist templates, specifically templates. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's an example. This is a screenshot from my computer of an MDM profile. And this is kind of the foundation by which all of the automations on a device take place. If you don't have this, you're not going to be able to do a lot of the other things, some of the things, but not all of the things. And Ross, I don't know if you want to chime in here with any color or additional comments, but if anyone goes into their system preferences on their Mac or even on their iPhone, if it's managed, and they go into profiles, they'll see quite a few profiles. I highlighted what is the core foundational profile here that gives IT or the organization certain rights. And you can see they've outlined them. Apple have outlined them here. And in fact, you can see Apple put some of them in red. I guess those are super important. The organization has the right to erase all data on this computer. And I will say, for anyone who has enrolled a personally owned computer into a business management system like this, that's typically where they get concerned. Like, wait a minute, you have the ability to erase all data on this computer. This is my computer. And that's why Apple has a separate enrollment process for personally owned devices where you cannot erase all data on that computer. It's a different set of privileges. So this is really only for company-owned devices. So far, so good, Ross.
Yeah. I mean, Apple always highlights this stuff, and they've been pretty restrictive on how to get profiles onto your machines. It used to be much easier.
Yeah.
And then starting with Big Sur, Apple added a couple extra steps, to make sure that gets on, and to make sure that anything you are installing, you're very aware of where it came from and what it can do. And the main reason for this is because of the idea of bad actors being able to use some of these tools. And so if in a business environment, it's pretty much expected, in order for compliance purposes, the organization needs to have a couple things in place so that you can do your job. Great. Mm-hmm. If you're just a consumer, running your own thing, you get a call from someone saying that, they're from Apple and they're tech support and they need to get onto your machine. Hopefully, you'll think twice when you start installing whatever, MDM configuration profile they send you, when you see some of those items in red, when you see the things, oh, this is what I'm allowing this person to do.
Mm-hmm.
The idea there is just to continue to safeguard consumers.
Yeah, for sure. And the automation from our view starts even further up the workflow at Apple Business Manager, actually where you purchase, link to Apple Business Manager, link to an MDM, the result being zero touch. I say this over and over, but I say it because I want to make sure people are aware that if you're not using zero touch, please contact us, because that is the foundation of all other automations. And that is what you want to get to, is automating the enrollment of your devices. Even if somebody were to have the ability, I do not, you can see here, this negative button is prohibitive. I cannot remove this. But even if I could, if I have zero touch set up, it would auto enroll again, or rather if I tried to remove it, it would auto enroll again. There's some caveats around that, but the basic idea is once you've automated the process of getting your Macs into Apple's ecosystem, it has to intentionally be kicked out of the system. You can't accidentally leave the system. Okay, so that's the foundation of device management. And just as a reminder, let me get my window here. The other thing I mentioned, which is Mac Manage, these are also, I would call them automations. These are little scripts that I mentioned. And if you click the install button on any one of these, it will run a series of commands. And you don't have to be an administrator to do this. This is all vetted and tested and ready to go. So we've talked about Mac Manage in the past. It's a great self-service tool. Some people will browse it and use it on their own. Others will need prompting, go to Mac Manage to run a maintenance script or to install software. And speaking of installing software, although it is technically possible to automate the installation of all software, it's not always practical. There could be situations where your employees do not have a good internet connection and the install packages are rather large. So rather than try to automate something that may not work because the infrastructure isn't in place, you provide an alternative, which is go here, let's see, I guess there's no installers, uninstallers, but all categories.
The uninstaller category exists, but the install category is just called general.
Okay, just called general. Okay, so if I go to general, there we go. I can install Google Chrome. Actually, I've already installed it, so it's grayed out. I can install Ignite or CyberDuck or whatever your situation warrants. But yeah, the idea here is that this is an easy button to do something that's already been tested and vetted for your environment, and you have more control here. So that's a piece of automation. And I'm going to get to some at the end, some questions of how we can get some feedback from our clients on improving automation. But this is kind of foundation of what we're using, how we're using automation. So speaking of how we're using automation, here is a form that we recently created in Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365, the new name, Microsoft 365. And to me, it looks very similar to a Google form. I think they were kind of the original, or at least my introduction to forms was through Google Forms. And there are lots of form solutions out there, some of them dedicated exclusively just to creating really nice forms. Typeform, I think, is one of them that comes to mind, if I have that name correct. This is a template that I used a template in Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365 to build this form. And this is internal only. So even if I shared the link and you tried to go there, you would have to authenticate using your 365 credentials to get to it, and it would only work on our domain. But what's nice about it is Ross and I were having an issue where we needed to collect information from various regions and various people, and we would ask for this information via email. And we would get that, but then we would decide we needed to change that information. Like we needed more information or less information, or we wanted to tweak exactly what we were getting. And you can imagine trying to communicate that out to various regions, various departments, various people. An email request that's constantly changing is not an easy task. So we were getting basically the old information, the old form emailed to us. So Ross and I said, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we have a form? We've had forms in the past. Let's go build a form. So I went to 365, and there is a form app. No, let me go back. There's a form app. There we go. And there's something called Power Automate. And these are all part of our 365 license. If they're not part of yours, let us know. But Forms is just like it sounds, allows you to build a form, and Power Automate allows you to take that form information and do something with it. So in our case, Power Automate notifies us via Teams that a new form has been created. It sends that information to an Excel sheet for reference, and it emails our service desk and creates a ticket. So it's very easy for us to act on. And with that information, we can then take the next step. So now when we want to tweak the form, add or remove data, change things, we just keep sending people to this form, and they fill out the most recent up-to-date form, and we get exactly the information we need. So I was pretty excited about this, because this is I don't know about you, Ross, but I felt like it was a huge step forward in our little workflow of trying to get the information that we need to do some bigger things. And really, without this foundational piece, we can't do anything else. So streamlining this is already, we've gotten great feedback. I feel more confident in the workflow. I think it's working better for you. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of it. Anytime that you can use these tools to really make sure that the information that you're receiving from another person is in the format you want, or as concise as you want, is great. And things like this, where you have the options for text fields if you want free text, or drop-down menus or bullet points. Anything that you can do to make sure that the information that you receive is in a consistent and easily accessible way, just removes variables. At the end of the day, of course, someone can send one of these through with complete gibberish for every item, but that's fine. I mean, they could have done that anyways through the email.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
there's some great validation features here where you can require certain types of information, like a date or a number or currency or something like that. And then there's also, I think they call it branching in this case, where you can have a list of, say, 3 options, and option A will present a different next step than option B. So that's a super powerful way to present information, and much easier than somebody looking through all the questions that don't even apply to them, right? Only present the questions that apply to the situation. And so that's a branching, I'm sure is what they called it. So definitely take advantage of this. And this was something that we already had a license for. We just needed to build it. And it really, if I can build it, anyone can build a form. It wasn't that difficult. And I even found a template that had an Apple keyboard. So it looks very Apple-like. Okay, so the other thing that we are big on, and this goes back years and years ago, is our checklist. And there are lots of checklist options out there, but I have not found one better than Teamwork. And Teamwork, I think it's just teamwork.com. And if you go to their website, they have a whole slew of project management solutions. To be honest with you, today, we pretty much just use the checklist feature. Occasionally, I'll dive into some of the more advanced project management features to help me keep things organized. But we have checklist and we have checklist templates. Teamwork actually calls them task and task list templates. But I find this super helpful for when we need to automate sort of the human side of things. We need people to do something repeatedly over and over again. And this has all sorts of features for creating basic lists, more advanced checklist, accountability for who checked that box, when did they check it. You can assign tasks. I mean, this is super powerful. And I personally don't think we could live without it. You will get some pushback for people who think that they know how to do everything right all the time. I think that's just human nature. But what I learned from actually reading the Checklist Manifesto, if you haven't read that, read the Checklist Manifesto. What I learned is there are checklists for those of us who don't know what we're doing and we need it to follow instructions. And then for those who do know what they're doing, they can use it as a last step to just verify, audit, and double check that what they just did, it was done accurately and completely, and they didn't miss anything. And I guarantee you, those of us who may feel that we do everything right, correctly, could still benefit from a checklist to sort of audit and make sure that we didn't forget anything. So, Ross, what are your thoughts on checklists?
I'm all for them as someone who spent time on the support desk with clients, and in my current role as an administrator, I've spent a lot of time using task lists. I've spent a lot of time creating them, for the rest of the team to use. And no matter how many times I've gone through these actions, it's always helpful for me to come back to them, either to, the most common thing is, of course, just make sure that I'm doing everything that needs to be done for the verb at hand. But also just to make sure that if there's something that I'm skipping each time intentionally, because we no longer do it or the information's out of date, eventually that clicks in my head. Oh, great. We'll update the task list to better reflect our current workplace practices. Yeah. And it's also wildly helpful for me because of the amount of plates I tend to keep spinning at any given time. It's great just to make sure that if I do get pulled away by an urgent need, I know exactly where I left off. Right. Yeah. And so it's not just about making sure that I'm doing everything, because so many of these workflows are just in my blood at this point, but knowing exactly where I am when I'm juggling, 10 or 15 different clients at any given time. It's a lifesaver just to have that timeline.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many times I've juggled basically the same task, but multiplied, and then trying to remember if I did that task, by checking it off and seeing, oh yes, I did that, I checked it off, I trust myself on that aspect, then it's much easier to move forward and not either miss something or do it again and say, well, maybe I better do it again because I don't remember if I did it or not. So yeah, checklist, I will say, don't give up on checklist. In the beginning, it may be a struggle to have too much detail in the checklist or even too little detail, but you can keep tweaking it and finding that balance. And that's the nice thing about forms and checklists is they are living documents. And as Ross pointed out, if you find a problem that keeps recurring, you can probably tweak the form or the checklist to get it right the next time. And as long as you're sending people to that originating form or checklist, then you're going to be able to distribute that change much more efficiently than if you said, go read this Word document. Like, no one's going to read the little change you made in a Word document, right? I don't think that works. But having a form or checklist works much better. Okay, so I want to just kind of summarize by saying that our best automations come from you, and whether it's you, our client, giving us feedback, or calling into the support desk and seeing recurring issues. But some things that you can do to kind of help come up with some ideas is reflect and document on your common business task or workflows. And I think the key part here is document. There's so many times where I've asked people, they've come to me with a problem and I've said, well, what is your current situation? Can you show that to me? Can you share that with me? And they can often articulate it like I'm articulating here, but I'm a very visual person. I want to see it because what you say to me, I may interpret differently than you intend it to be interpreted. And it always surprises me how many people do not have it documented or are challenged to document. And I get it. If you've ever tried to sit down, and Ross, I know you've experienced this, but you try to sit down and take something that's in your head that seems very simple and basic to you and just put it on paper so other people can understand it, it suddenly becomes very complex. You're like, what? Whoa, what's going on here? I didn't realize. And that's the challenge. But once you get to a point, even if it's a rough draft, even if it's a dirty, rough draft that nobody agrees on, it's still the starting point for taking that pile of clay and molding it into something that looks like it's more elegant. So you really do need to spend some time reflecting and, most importantly, documenting your common business tasks and workflows. And in that process, I guarantee you, you're going to find some inefficiencies. And at that point, maybe because you might not have as much experience as, say, Ross or I do at building automations, you may not know what to do next. And that's where I would schedule time with us to discuss that. You know, put in some of the work to reflect, document, and think about your inefficiencies, then come to us and we can be much more effective in helping you, because now we have something that we can look at, we can discuss. And I'm not talking about big, massive, you know, workflow changes. The example Ross and I shared earlier of the form we created. I mean, that's a really small change in the workflow. Instead of asking people to email us, we send them a link. And instead of sending an email, they fill out the form. But that was a huge improvement for us. So you just need to find those little wins to really improve your workflow. And whether it's through your device automation or your human automation, I guarantee you there are areas to improve with automation. Even within our own team and organization here, there's still a lot more we can do with automation. And we're working on it, and we have been, and we will continue. But I see it even more so in clients who haven't even thought about it. And that's why I just want to get the word out to think about automation and let us know how we can help. And I'm only a couple minutes over, so we're gonna wrap on that. Any last words, Ross?
No, I mean, that really covers it. Always communicate with us. There's general rule is automate everything you can, and assess what those things are, because every now and then you will find something that, you know, sounds like a great project to work on, but then you realize it only happens once a year, and you'll spend more time building the automation workflow than just doing the thing. And so you start to see sort of what those patterns are. But by and large, especially if it's something that you see you or your team doing with any degree of frequency, muse on it, you know, see what you can find out. And if it's based in your technology, especially your Apple technology, always feel free to let us know. Because a lot of the scripts and the technology that I've built and put together over the last couple of years directly comes from client asks. It's like, oh, this is, you know, the fourth or fifth person who's asked about this. I should probably think about that a little bit harder. And then we start building those products.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's so hard sometimes because we're so busy. We're like, I don't have time to do this. I'll just keep doing it the way I've always done it. But at a certain point, it is totally worth it to just say, okay, even if it takes me, let's say 8 hours to build some automation, how many hours is that going to save me over the next month, quarter, year? And obviously, if it's going to save you 5 minutes, it's not worth doing. But if it's going to save you, you know, 5 minutes every day, it could legitimately be worth doing. And in a, you know, I don't know what the math is on that, but your return on investment could be rather quick. So yeah, think about it, talk to us, reach out to us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for our last live stream of 2001. I almost said 2022 of 2001, or oh my God, 2020, 2021.
There we go.
2021. Wow, 2001. Blast from the past. That'll be our last one, and then we're going to have a whole new agenda for next year. And I would love your feedback so we can get any items that you want to hear on that agenda. So enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you in 2. Thanks. Bye.
Take care.